Another weekly edition of Pedal Talk, our weekly podcast. And this week, we are joined by Brad Tucker, the owner of a law firm known as Colorado Bike Law. I'm sure most of you have heard of it. Brad has been a litigator since 1990 and now 35 years. And he began working with Bicycle Colorado in 2004 as a volunteer. He was elected to the board at 2008, then as a vice president, later to become president of the board of directors in 2018. And to this day, he is still involved in leadership at a high level with Bicycle Colorado and practices strictly bicycle law. He can tell you a lot more about his practice than I can. So I'd like to introduce you and say good morning to Brad Tucker. Hi, Brad.
Hi, Gary. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So working in Colorado Bike Law, doing very well. I see your name everywhere, your logos, all sorts of places. So obviously, and by the way, transparency, Brad has become a supporter of Colorado Avid Cyclists now. So you'll see his logo on our site as well as our upcoming kits. And it's been just great to work and get advice and almost mentorship from Brad. But you've been involved in cycling how long, Brad? Before law school?
Yeah.
Which came first?
Like everybody, you ride a bike as a kid, and growing up in Oklahoma, like I did, especially during the 70s, 80s, not a terribly bike-friendly place to be riding, and so, like a lot of young men who get their driver's license, I lost interest in riding a bike, and in law school, kind of figured out I was headed toward a high-stress profession, needed to find something to gain some fitness and kind of improve my health and lifestyle. Started running. That was great for a long time. Then my knees started going out on me. In the interim, I'd moved to Colorado. And in 99, I got talked into entering the lottery for Ride the Rockies. I basically said yes, because back then it was hard to get in. Just because you sent in an application certainly didn't mean you were going to get in. But I got in, and so then I figured, well, I better get a bike and I better start riding. And after that, things started happening really fast for me. I instantly fell back in love with the bike, started doing long rides. Like a lot of people, you kind of dip your toes in an event like Ride the Rockies, and then you're doing centuries and triple bypass. And then I got the racing bug and started racing in 2003, and have raced ever since. Actually did a race last night.
Which one?
The Frying Pan Road Race in Basalt. It goes from Basalt up to Root Eye Reservoir and back. It's kind of a falls flat to a steep climb to a fast descent, fast finish. It was fun.
And, we got to ask, how'd you do?
Well, I won my age group, so that's good. Thankfully, old guys like me, and I guess I'm going to throw you in there too, Gary.
Thanks.
We have age group racing, so we don't have to compete with these youngsters. We can still see our name high up on the results and feel good about ourselves. But I felt good about the effort. It's fun to stay involved in racing. I enjoy it still.
Yeah, I love it. It is fun. So got into that, still into it. So after law school, what led you to Bicycle Colorado? How did you get associated with that?
Yeah, it was, a little intentional and a little by accident. So I started my law career in 1990, and I especially as an associate coming out of law school, I was like the stereotypical stories you hear. I was working 60-hour weeks, just like unbelievably busy with my career. And the upside of that is I got incredible training, mentorship, and supervision and really taught how to be a courtroom lawyer, taught the subject matter material that allows me to be an expert in this area today. And over time got better and better, developed clients, book of business. I was doing, institutional work for big companies, corporations, on the defense side of tort lawsuits, and got recruited into a firm that later made me a partner. And in 1998, and so in shortly after that, I paid off my law school loans, thankfully, and realized, okay, I've done what I set out to do. I have quickly achieved this kind of professional success that I was my main goal in entering law school, and now I want to do something to give back. And you see a lot of lawyers that join the opera guild or whatever to frankly, I think a lot of them join stuff like that and get involved in those kinds of organizations because they want to rub elbows with people they think are going to be potential clients.
Mm-hmm.
That really didn't appeal to me. It didn't sound interesting. I wanted to give back and make a difference, but I also wanted it to be something that I cared about. And that was corresponding with the same time that I was a new, super enthusiastic bike racer. Bicycle Colorado was still a young organization in its infancy at the time. Excuse me, but I knew about it. I was on their mailing list. I had kind of been curious about bike advocacy and that type of thing. So I was downtown at a deposition, and I basically cold called the office. The executive director at the time was Dan Grunig. I just walked into their office and introduced myself and said, "Hey, I want to help, and I'll do whatever you need me to do. If you need me to, stuff envelopes or just really, clerical type stuff, if that's what you need, I'll do it. But here are some things I think I could really help." And we started a conversation, and Dan loved the idea of having basically on-call legal advice, and that's how it started. I formed a friendship and a relationship with Dan. He used to call it calling the bat phone, if you're old enough to remember the old Batman show.
I am.
Where he would call me and with the most random legal questions. It was keep in mind, like the organization that Bicycle Colorado is today is a massively different organization than what existed back then. I'm talking right now, like in 02, 03, it was basically Dan and one other full-time employee doing everything out of a small office. And so to say that I've witnessed the growth of that organization is an understatement. It's changed tremendously, and it's been incredible to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know I'm loving being a part of it. We're a supporter of them as well, and enjoy all of it. And try to, we give part of our proceeds to them of anything we do. But
Thank you
it's
for
exciting.
that.
It's just a great group to work with. The enthusiasm. So what else have you done for them? So it started small. What else have you done with Bicycle Colorado that led you to obviously being vice president of the board, president of the board? How did that grow?
Yeah, so initially I would have just described myself as volunteer legal counsel. I've lost track of how long I've been on the board. I heard you say 2004, and frankly, if I hadn't heard that, I wouldn't have been able to give you a solid answer.
Well, I'm glad I did my research.
Thank you for that, because I would have just said a long time, a couple of decades. Probably for 2 or 3 years, I did the just kind of volunteer legal counsel work for the organization, and then joined the board in '04, was a regular board member for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years before becoming an officer. And then, of course, I was president for 5 years, and I'm still on the board. So I guess I've been a board member for 21 years now.
Wow.
And hope to remain on the board for as long as I'm a helpful, productive member of the board. Obviously, the legal space is where I offer the most expertise. Our law and policy team that brainstorms initiatives for new statutes, new laws in Colorado for bicycle safety and infrastructure is something that I'm deeply involved in. There's a handful of us that kind of specialize in that work for Bicycle Colorado, and we meet regularly to talk about what we're going to try to do next and how we're going to go about making it happen. That's been a very gratifying part of my involvement.
Now back to, basically your practice is cycling law.
Right.
So you defend cyclists. Is it all in accidents, basically? Is it all centered around that?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, I will occasionally take on cases that have more to do with access or I don't know, just random. I've done contracts for professional racers. I've done contracts for tour guides and bicycle tour organizations, and done releases and whatnot for organizations and individuals that are putting on races and events. So if it touches the bike, I've probably worked with it. I've actually worked with a lot of municipalities in terms of their questions and efforts to improve bicycle infrastructure and facilities within their community. That's been fun. But I would say the bread and butter piece of the work that I do for pay is representing injured cyclists in crash cases, whether that's caused by a motorist or a defective bike or bike part or some other random scenario that left them injured through usually no fault of their own.
And I mean, it's got to be tough. I'll just be, a layman at it. When you're dealing with an accident that involves a car versus a bike, there's usually one party that gets injured, the other is not, other than maybe scratches on the vehicle. So it's got to be kind of tough I would think it's got to be tough to deal with that all the time, because you're dealing with there's a lot of trauma that goes with it.
It is.
And you're dealing with people that have lost a lot, and it's just such a vulnerable position physically to be in, and also mentally afterwards.
But no question about it, Gary. And it's hard on my family. I usually don't talk about my work at home because I'm someone that rides almost every day, and they don't want to hear about a lot of what I see because it would scare them, honestly. They know, and I know it's kind of an avoidance strategy, but it's a reality. I very seldom, of course, I'd never talk about the specific, confidential parts of cases, but I really don't talk about my work at home. And I think that probably helps me have a little safe place to go to get away from the secondary trauma that I probably have from representing so many injured people. I mean, over the years, if you think about it, I took my first case, I think, in 2003. So, I have literally formally represented hundreds of cyclists in Colorado on injury cases. And for each one that I formally represented, there's probably 4 more that I've just talked to on the phone. And fortunately for them, they had smaller cases and didn't really justify retaining an attorney. So we I gave them coaching and self-help, told them how to do a small claims court case or handle it on their own with the insurance company. And so if you think about that, honestly, I've probably had exposure to 1,000 bike crashes over the last 20 plus years. I can't even ride around the Denver area without riding somewhere where I know, oh, this is where so-and-so got hit. And I mean, on the one hand, that's awful that, of course, that there are so many needless crashes happening. But on the other hand, the help that I've been able to provide people and their families in difficult times has been really immensely satisfying.
That was my next question. So you answered. It's got to be amazingly satisfying when you are bringing closure to some of these things that, have a horrific physical and mental, they take a beating on you, I'm sure, or on the clients, I should say.
Yeah.
And that's got to be gratifying.
Yeah, it is.
I remember.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, like, the one time the times, and there have been sadly many of them, where you never really end it feeling at all great are the fatality cases, because no matter how much money I'm able to get a spouse or a parent or a child for the loss of their family member, it just it only does so much, right? I mean, it'll make their life financially easier moving forward, but there's just a limit there to what you can actually do. Those are the only, everybody else that calls me about their case, it doesn't matter if they have a sprained ankle or horrific injuries where they were in the hospital for a month. The first, in that first conversation with me, they tell me how lucky they are to be alive, and that is the common thread that conversation has had over and over and over. The only time I don't hear how lucky they are is when I'm talking to the spouse or the child or the parent on those fatality cases, and those people never feel lucky, nor should they. And so while, especially as a cyclist, having had my own share of close calls over the years, I know what they mean when they say that they're lucky and they feel lucky. But I don't want us to have to feel lucky because we've been injured and not killed in a car crash. So that frustration really fuels what I try to do with my work on the advocacy side to make things safer. I always say I may be the only lawyer you meet that is working hard to put myself out of a job. Nothing would make me happier if traffic violence crashes that injure and kill cyclists would end. So I'm working.
And I know the advocacy part has been huge. Most recently, the House bill passed and was signed by Governor Polis, and you were highly involved in that, the distracted driving law, which now you cannot hold, well, at the beginning of the year when it becomes active, cannot hold and operate a handheld device while you're driving. Right. Tell us about that. And I know that was not a first time pass. No. It's been going on for years. So tell me about that one.
Yeah, 5 years. When you get involved in trying to make new laws through the General Assembly, which is what the State House of Representatives and State Senate combined are called, it is a process, and it involves hard work, persistence, tenacity, and compromise. And this is a situation that illustrates that perfectly. The years that it took to get this over the finish line. And you know, I won't lie about it. I wish it was had more teeth. I wish it was stronger. Every law we've had passed, I've pushed for more and more and more. But you know, you have to start somewhere, and I think this is a magnificent step in the right direction. And just to be able to get this done was such a victory for cyclists and all vulnerable road users in the state. Frankly, all people who aren't vulnerable road users, everyone, because the same distracted driving that can kill a cyclist or a runner or someone in a wheelchair can kill someone driving a car. This is good for everybody. This is not really bad for anybody in terms of impact, and yet it took so long and was so hard to do it. I really want to give a shout out to a client of mine who I represented who had the misfortune of being hit at speed by a distracted driver, and his friend who was riding behind him had the whole thing videoed. And so his name is John Cinder, and he's one of those guys that told me how lucky they were when I talked to him, even though he had multiple broken bones. And if you've ever have you seen the video, Gary? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't.
So he testified early in the stages of this when we're trying to get this bill out of committee. At one of the most difficult junctures of the lawmaking process, and we were able to play the video, and he testified about what had happened. And lawmakers who were on that committee who went into the process thinking they weren't going to support this changed their mind, and it passed that committee unanimously. And in the aftermath of John's crash, he told me how he wanted to get involved. He knew I was involved in bike advocacy with Bicycle Colorado, and he said, you know, how can I help? And I remember talking to him back then, saying, look, it's going to take some time, but this is something we're working on, and you're going to be a key part of it. And he did a great job, and I'm so proud of him for what he did. It's incredible. I would have to sit here and really think about it, but and at least 5 or 6 of the laws that we've passed over the last decade plus have really had significant assistance by clients of mine who were involved in a situation that predates the law that we later got changed or enacted. And it's been cool to see how powerful that experience has been for people to be out there, out front, off in the face of something that we are trying to get done in terms of bike safety. Super cool.
Mm-hmm. What other laws have you been involved in prior to this that were pushed through or passed?
Well, the 3 feet to pass law, that I can tell you all kinds of stories about that one. The vulnerable road user law, which if you're not familiar with that, previously, if you were convicted of careless driving causing serious bodily injury, the worst thing that happened to you was a 4-point infraction on your driver's license. So in that case, I had represented a woman named Adelaide Pear, who lives in Boulder, pretty famous cyclist, triathlete up there. Actually wrote a book about her experience called Deep Loved, which if you or any of your listeners have never read it, I recommend it. It's excellent. But in her experience, she was someone who didn't own a car. She lived a car-free lifestyle, rode her bike everywhere, and was involved in really one of the worst non-fatality injury accidents or crashes that I've ever worked on. And what frustrated her so much in the aftermath of that was that the guy that caused this was driving the very next day, and she was so physically injured, it was a year before she was able to begin riding her bike again. And we had conversations about this. This just isn't fair. It's not right. And so that law got changed to where if you caused serious bodily injury to a vulnerable road user, it was a 12-point infraction on your license, not a 4-point. And what that means is your license would be suspended for a year. And then someone who had made such a consequential error that it impacted someone else, so significantly, would feel the brunt of that decision and be impacted in it by more than just paying a modest fine and having their insurance rates go up. So that was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you other examples as well. There's probably 5 or 6 of those where the laws were changed because of courageous people that wanted to make a difference after something awful had happened to them.
So what's on the horizon?
Yeah.
What's your next, I don't want to say target, that sounds offensive maybe, but what is the next thing you're going to be looking at?
Well, that's a great question, and a meeting that we'll have this fall to talk about your thoughts, what you think needs to change. One of the things I'd like to see is some of the laws that we've passed. I mentioned earlier, I wished initially they had more teeth and or were broader in scope. So that's always an option. I'll give you an example there. We got the Colorado safety stop law passed, which, as most people know, I'm oversimplifying it, but it allows a cyclist to treat a stop sign like a yield sign and a red stop light like a stop sign. And obviously the purpose there is to get cyclists safely through an intersection as quickly as possible, because that's where most crashes happen. And that's an example where it was a process. It started out as, all right, let's create model language that a municipality can adopt and opt in on, but it's not mandatory throughout the state. I don't know if you remember this, but that's how that law started. And then later we went back and said, okay, let's make this the law statewide. So sometimes with these new laws, particularly when you have skeptical people on the, I'll call it the other side, who are not instantly willing to support what we're trying to do, you have to start slow and add to it, make it stronger with time. So we'll be doing that as well when we think about what to do next.
For some reason, my cam got blurry, but it won't fix itself. So I'm going to be blurry for the next couple minutes, apparently.
It's not my glasses.
Okay. Yeah. If everybody viewing takes off their glasses, they won't know the difference. And we're flashing up, and what we already did, we'll flash it up again, your contact information, email, and your website. But you can also find his information on Colorado Avid Cyclist as well. And also you write blogs about once a month, I know, on your site, and we feature them on our blog page as well. So you can go back to that page and check them out, and also link right back to Brad's site. So Brad, I really appreciate you coming by this morning.
Oh, you bet.
Or coming by video wise.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's great talking to you, great catching up, and I'm sure I'm going to be seeing a lot of you at Bicycle Colorado events and other type events in the months and years to come. Looking forward to it, Brad.
Thanks.
So, thank you very much.